Talk about a little bit of history, talk about some legislation, lots of things happening right now in the last couple of weeks and will continue. And then talk about how is this going to affect you all, PSAP operators, first responders. Some talk about the lessons that we've learned from the HERO project, or projects, because we've got two of them. Some conclusions, and if there's enough time, depending how quickly I go, where there's some questions and answers. Okay, brief bit of history. Most of you will know that UK PLC are not that much in favour of pan-European ecall. Here's some history. ACPO ITS and the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister between 2002 and 2007 defined the specification for ecall based on 112. So it's actually come from here. I was one of the ones in the room that sat down and drew out what this machine, machine-to-machine activation, what it should look like, the information that should be provided. We did it for a reason, and the reason being that it was designed to be used by first responders, nothing else. That's simple. So let's get that bit straight. Right, how ecall works. It's basically the same as Kathy's system. In fact, I think we're even using similar modems now, aren't we? But basically, you've got a box in the car with a dumb mobile phone and a GPS receiver. The European one specifies, this is the 112 that I'm talking about, specifies that it will use Galileo. They've got to find a use for some of these satellites that are whizzing around. This is one of them. Okay? Passes through the 112 network, so it's a designated TS12 call. That does make a difference, and that's where we do depart from what Kathy does here with OnStar. Ours is a 112 call. Doesn't matter what network it's on, it gets priority. Then passes through to the PSAP, and then eventually it'll find its way down to here. But also, the other bit that we're working with is getting value added for traffic management as well. But trying to wake the governments up to the fact that they have really good data they can use to manage the incident better is a challenge. Okay, how can we provide ecall across Europe? Mine is right the way across Europe, all 28 member states I have to deal with. So, top one here, this is a standard 999-112 call, goes to the first PSAP, so it's BT or Vodafone. Third party, which is what Kathy's been talking about here, is data and voice go to a public or private call centre, and then is passed on to the PSAP. So you get a call screening first, decides whether it's a real call, then they handle it to BT or to Vodafone. Or it can go straight through to the most appropriate PSAP. There are different systems all over Europe. I have one silly slide that I use. There's a very thin man in a huge pair of trousers which says one size does not fit all. Literally, at the moment, I've got 22 different solutions, all with the same goal at the end, but how they get there is there's different ways of addressing this. And then you've got this complete third-party solution here, which is the OnStar solution. So, let's talk about legislation. The ecall that I'm dealing with will be law. It's being brought in to Europe by an amendment to type approval. So what that means is all new types of vehicle, and this is the latest date we've got here, 1st of October 2017. But that's not for the cars. That's for the PSAP. And what it says is that the PSAPs have to be ready 6 months before the car's produced. Now, for those that are bright amongst you, and I'm not one of them, if you do the maths from that, it equals April 2018. I have been told quite categorically, do not do the maths. by the European Commission. Okay? But we'll wait and see. But they had to draw a line in the sand somewhere, because literally there is so much going on in the European Parliament, in the Council of Ministers. There is so much lobbying, positioning and all sorts of things going on. They had to make one immovable line. That's it. So that's the regulations for all PSAPs everywhere, all 28 states. Whether we want to do it or not, you're not going to get much choice over that. Now, the specification and the amendment to type approval will probably be sorted in June this year. Probably, bearing in mind that there's a European election in May. So it'll be a new raft of ministers that's going to come in and deal with this. It's still in the Greek presidency and they kick this through, but the next presidency is Italy. They are also equal partners, so they've undertaken to continue this. But there is so much jockeying for position at the moment, it's unbelievable. So that's a brief run through the legislation. It's going through the European Parliament. It's gone through twice now without any objections. It's now at the Council of Ministers, and this is where the horse trading is going on, with a lot of lobbying going on from the vehicle manufacturers, from organisations like the FIA, who are diametrically opposed to the vehicle manufacturers at the moment. Okay, just talk about member states and how this impacts on you. Now, the realisation that's dawning on most member states is that in order to bring ecall in, as an example, the United Kingdom is going to need 5 ministries to work together. Great. And it's the same throughout Europe. 5 actually is about the usual number, but they're all going to have to come together in order to make ecall happen. So on a policy level, it's a challenge. You then start to talk about the need for a clear regulatory framework. Now, what the European Parliament and the Commission have done, they've regulated for the vehicle makers, and they've regulated for the member states with their PSAPs, with the safety answering points. What they haven't done is deal with the bit in the middle that makes it work, which is the mobile networks. Now, all mobile networks have undertaken to upgrade their systems by the end of this year. And they need a small software patch in there which identifies that the 112 call from the car is actually an ecall and there's a data burst in there. So we will wait and see. So, that's a quick gallop through. So what does this mean to the UK? UK PLC, what does it mean to you? What it means is that there will have to be a change in how BT and Vodafone handle 112 calls. They will have to put some additional software in place. PSAP operators will get additional information. The next challenge, in this particular instance for the UK, is how do we pass this data between PSAP level 1 and police, fire and ambulance, and if you're really unlucky, the Coast Guard if you've got caught with the tide going out. And what do we do with it? What safeguards, because this is personal data, don't forget, what safeguards are there in place for this data? And what opportunities does it present? So those are very key messages. What's happened in the European Parliament when the Data Commissioner was asked to rule on ecall? I was sitting next to the guy and he stood up and said, I won't talk about ecall based on 112. I have no need. There are specific dispensations for the handling of personal data. What I will talk about is third-party service ecall and telematics, in-vehicle telematics beyond that, because those are not covered. And there is an extensive ruling which came from the Data Commissioner. So there's policy considerations on how you're going to deal with this, particularly, as Kathy said, 90% of all manual calls at the moment for ecall are false. So that's a real concern, how they're going to be managed within each country. And clearly, training implications. What does an ecall mean? What's your level of confidence that you get an ecall that comes in? So, what sort of difference is it going to make? First thing, As Kathy said, you're going to get an accurate location, very accurate. You're also going to get the identification of the vehicle. You'll get its model designation, so in terms of fire and rescue, you will know where the airbags are on that vehicle. So you'll, as Kathy was saying, you can plan how you're going to do an extraction. You also know the fuel type. And so the next thing beyond that is that there are changes in the landscape in the reception of 112 calls. So you've got these calls, these 112 e-calls coming in. You will also have third-party service e-calls coming in, probably ex-directory. You know, dedicated line numbers coming into the PSAPs. But there will also be an increased demand from third-party service providers. They will be approaching, and OnStar are not the only ones, to actually ensure that the vehicle manufacturers are positioned to offer paid-for services as opposed to the free e-call. This is what a minimum set of data, this is what all the fuss is about for e-call. This is it taken actually from the standards. So it shows you exactly what you get. Now I'm going to have to speed up a bit because I've been given the 5-minute sign. So you can see exactly the type of information that a PSAP operator will get. The only one that may change is this one here, the vehicle direction. Because what we've found is where it spins, where a vehicle rotates or turns, it tends to spoof the last 3 positions because it ends up going back on itself and it doesn't like that. But there is additional data that can be provided. Now, where did I get this one from? I think this is Italian. But this is what it will look like for a PSAP operator. This is what an e-call coming in will be like. So you'll get a voice call, so a regular 112 call, or 999 in your instance, but you'll also get this information as well. So either on one screen in front of you to the side, you'll get this. There's another version of it. This is Czech. It's from the Czech Republic. So you can see the call number, all the data is just presented in front of you. It's just decoded and the operator sees it. Kathy talked about GPS and the GNSS part of it, Global Navigation Systems and Services. This is where it starts to make a difference because it will not only tell you exactly where you are, but which carriageway, so you know which way to approach. And that's just another, but there's a couple of different versions that we've got running at the moment. Depends how much money the PSAPs have. A lot of them are actually using Google Maps because unless you've got an expensive GIS system, that's the next best option. So just to talk about lessons learned. First thing, all member states, whether they're hero participants, and we've got 21 at the moment, they're looking and waiting for the European Parliament to sort themselves out, and we're not there yet. They regard clarity over the terms for the amendment to type approval, and it's all to do with third-party service eCall, a lot of it, and it's still not cleared yet. Mobile networks. The GSMA, which is the worldwide governing body for mobile networks, supports eCall. That's great. You start talking about it in a member state, it's a slightly different story. But nevertheless, they have undertaken to upgrade by the end of this year. As I said a little earlier, member state ministries need to work together. That could be interesting. There will need to be changes to operational practices. But the most important thing is we need to start telling the story to the citizens of Europe. We've started already. But in order to stop the 90% false calls where they see this big red button and think, oh, what does that do? I think I'll press it. And as Kathy said, once you've pressed it, you can't go back. You're going to get that call. Okay, 2 more slides to go. Challenges. False calls. It is a challenge. There are a number of different solutions in Europe. One of them is to put a screening call centre in front of the PSAP, just to take out the 112 calls. It can do that quite easily. The cost of the PSAP upgrade can vary. It depends on the age of the architecture that's there already. For the UK, it's around about £250,000 to start with. So not huge amounts of money, but nevertheless, it's an amount of money. Talking about uniform quality of service, it has to be the same across Europe. I touched on the expansion of third-party service ecall. Most vehicle manufacturers are going down this road. They're providing their own. And they will come to the PSAPs and saying, right, I need you to take my data as well as the other data. So that's a challenge. Cross-border, not too much of a problem in the United Kingdom. Luxembourg, which is one of my pilot sites, no matter where you are in Luxembourg, if you dial 112, it goes to Germany. Doesn't make any difference. Germans offered to take it off them, but Luxembourgs weren't too keen on that one. And then the last one is the quality of the aftermarket device. And here's one here. British, which I'm very proud to actually hold up, and it is the very best in the world at the moment. But this one is actually a good one. This complies with every single standard that is published. My nightmare scenario is eBay, to be quite honest. The Chinese turned up at an event we ran 2 years ago with devices a little bit bigger than this and said, well, we've come to be testing our systems. And I went, okay, have you read the standards? No. We guessed. And they had. They bought an automotive-grade ecall device, taken it to bits, built their own, and turned up. So you consider that. They failed, but every failure they had was just a software configuration. But if you think about that, that's a worry, because then there is no guarantee about the quality of the engineering and how it's been put together. Okay. These ones, this one, Ford Sync, it's not an ecall device, but that's here now already. It will provide this. Most countries look at that as a stepping stone for ecall. This is Nelly Cruz, and she was actually launching the first aftermarket ecall device, which is this one here, from the Bulgarian government, who set a challenge for €50. We're getting below that now, because these are a lot less than €50. But different requirements for different countries. Bulgaria and Romania really, really need this, because their roads at a weekend are like a battlefield clearing station, literally. Okay. That's it. Did I do it? Did I get in time?
You did. 2 minutes.
Whoa! Result.
Well done.